Hey guys, it's Rachel and welcome back to the video, and today I am doing a simple speed art for you guys using some products that Arteza sent to me, and they also gave me a discount code, and we're going to talk about that later in the video. But I haven't done a simple speed art in a while, and I know you guys used to really like this because it's pretty chill. I just kind of talk about my art making process and such, so I hope you guys enjoy this video. So Arteza contacted me again and they're like, hey, we're gonna send you some more products, just go ahead and look through our website and tell me what you want. And I know I've already tried both the markers and the color pencils, and I actually really liked both of them. So I knew that I wanted to try some more products, and I was looking through their website and I found that their real watercolor marker brush pens are like a very popular thing from their website. So I was like, this is probably something that I want to try. And I've always been really fascinated with like really well done watercolor, especially when it's done on characters such as mine, because I think it's something that's more hard to control. It takes a lot more technique to pull off watercolor, I think. So I wanted to try it for myself and see what I could do. Watercolor is one of those things that can kind of actually just define your style. So I know you've seen a lot of like marker artists, there's digital artists, there's color pencils and stuff, but even just making your art with only watercolors can kind of just be like your definition of your style. So I wanted to try to kind of play with that and move it into my style and see what happens, I guess. One of the things that always kind of like pushed me away from watercolors and made me not like try it as much was the precision of watercolors, because this is something that's a little bit harder to control, especially if you're just using the regular watercolors where it's a big palette of different colors and you put water onto them and use like a normal brush, because it's a lot harder to control it. It blends a little bit more, there's not as much pigment. So when I saw these, I was like, this is almost like markers. So I was like, I feel like I should try this out. And I was right. The thing with these brush pens is it's a lot easier to control exactly where you want your pigment, I guess, because you can kind of use it almost just like a regular marker, and then you also get to choose how much pigment there is, how like bright and dark and stuff like that it is, because you get to choose how much water you're putting into your piece. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later on, about the different techniques that you can use with these brush pens and how you can manipulate your colors and such. Arteza also sent me some watercolor paper to go along with this, because you don't want to use like regular paper or even like smooth bristle paper that you usually use for like regular markers. You want this watercolor paper because it has a little bit of texture to it, so it allows your pigment and your water to kind of grab onto the paper and not spread as much, and it also won't ruin your paper because this is what it's built for. And I think Arteza's paper that they sent me, it did a really good job of it. It did exactly what I needed it to do, and it was really good. I'm going to leave both the watercolor pens and the watercolor sketch pad in the description below if you guys want both of them. One of the things that I was nervous about going into it was putting in my own ink style into it, because I personally like to have black outlines on all my drawings. So I was nervous on whether it would spread or if it would kind of blend into the color. So for me, I had to just trial and error a lot of different inks. So I took a few different ink markers that I had, put them on some of the watercolor paper on the side, and then just went over it with some pigment and some water and just see if it spread. I ended up going with a Sharpie fine liner because it spread the least. It had the most, I guess, like precision. It was nice and smooth. It didn't bleed at all or mix into my color. So that's what I would recommend, unless you find something else. I think when you're looking for an ink that works well with watercolors, you can look at the description of the marker if you're looking online. So it'll usually talk about whether it's compatible with watercolors. And then also, if you're in like an art store, usually it says on the marker if it is water compatible. Along with the ink, I decided to simplify a lot of my inking style, because usually, as you guys know, I do a lot of cross hatching and hatching when I'm doing ink work, because I think it adds a lot of detail and depth to the character. But I wanted to take that out so that the watercolor could really shine, and then it takes away the potential of it possibly blending into the color. So I think when you're doing ink into a watercolor like this, you want to kind of simplify your inking so that you can really let the watercolor shine. And instead of shading with the ink, you can actually shade with watercolor. I know that sometimes people either ignore this or don't think they're able to, but the way that I found I was able to was let my first coat of pigment dry, and then I either go over with the same marker and just make it brighter, which would act as like a shading technique, or take another marker and do the same thing. It's kind of just like regular markers, and I've talked about this before in my shading tutorial, but let's say you have some orange hair and you want to add some shading to it. So let your orange dry, and then maybe take like a brown or like a darker orange or some sort, and once that's dried, you can go over in your shaded areas and add in your shading. Now for some of the techniques that I actually learned while using these markers is there's a few different ways that you can kind of go at it depending on whether you want it super pigmented, you want it dull, you want it to spread a lot. It all depends on how much water you put into it and whether you add the water first or last. Most of the time, how I did this character is I would prime the paper with water first. So Arteza supplies you with this little watercolor brush or water brush pen. So it's has no pigment in it, and you just add water into it, and then it allows you to prime the paper as you would with just a regular brush pen. So I would prime the paper with some water over it, and then I would go in with my color and add in my pigment. When I did this, it allowed my pigment to be like really bright instead of dulling it out. When I added the water first, that's usually what happened, as long as I didn't add too much water. And then if I felt that it wasn't pigmented enough, I would let it dry and then add more of the color on later. After I had added the color, if I found that it was either too dark or it wasn't smooth enough, I would just go over with another layer of water, and this would smooth everything out, take away a little bit of the color too. Another technique that I found that I did for the background is on another separate sheet of paper, I would just mix a lot of water with a lot of pigment and just go back and forth and basically make kind of like a regular watercolor pool that you would get from like a palette or something. Basically, this just acted as another palette. So then I would take my color pen again and kind of take what I just made and put it onto my background, and it acted as almost just like a regular watercolor palette, and it kind of allowed me to fill in the background without it being too pigmented. So as a general rule of thumb, the more water you add, the duller your color is going to be, and the more it's going to spread and kind of blend in with your paper. And the less water that you add, the more pigmented it's going to be, and the more control you're going to have over where your color goes. Also, I just wanted to say, guys, we are really close to 10K subs, and I have a really cool surprise for you guys, and I've been working on it for a while, so I really hope you guys enjoy it. I think you guys will. So once we get to 10K, my next video will be about my 10K celebration for you guys. Alright guys, now I have a discount code that Arteza was kind enough to supply me with for you guys. It is Scribbles with Rachel 3. Don't forget the 3 on the end, and you get 10% off of your order. This code is valid till April 23rd of 2020. Again, I'm going to leave the products that I use in the description below if you guys want some of these products, but feel free to look at the rest of the website if you want some markers or some colored pencils. This discount code will still get you 10% off. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. It's something that I haven't done in a while. I haven't done Speedarts in a while, and I don't usually do a lot of watercolor stuff, but I really enjoy this. If you guys have any ideas for videos or anything that you want to see, leave it in the comments below. Let me know what you guys want to see next, and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome art videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!